All right. So I have a workshop, or not a really workshop. I have like a lecture in at you guys, right? It. I pretty much find an interesting topic. I write a small script and I just pop it into a PowerPoint, and I think you guys will find it interesting. It is related to more game design, and it's more like theoretical, but it's interesting enough.
Nice.
So I guess like I need a way for you to know if I should speed up or slow down, sort of thing, because I'm not sure how well.
Hmm.
We'll just figure it out. We'll get the
Yeah.
vibe. Okay.
Well,
I have to trust. I have to trust you guys. I just thought. I just did something I thought would
if
be
you have any
interesting.
ideas to shout it out.
Listen, don't worry. No one here is expecting this to be super professional.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, but even then, I just don't want it to be like, oh.
Expect to show up with a 1 out of 5 on Rate My Profession.
Yeah, yeah.
We'll make your page for you.
Rate my suit, damn it.
Cool.
Don't worry.
It's the worst club I had ever even thought to join.
Well, if it is, let me know.
Try to
Um,
improve.
yeah, well, yeah, it's just more like I know last time we spent some time after talking and chatting about games, about the actual games we were working on. So I didn't want to go over time again. You guys be like, "Hmm." Okay, so let me know. So today I wanted to talk about just game mechanics and how some game mechanics can be rather complex. And I thought that was just interesting. Like, what does that really mean? And I made some conjectures and assumptions, but I based this off of like articles and stuff, so it's not like out there. But it's also more like I think you guys are free to try to disprove or free to try to like think about it yourselves and like come at me and be like you can at me if you want.
Could be a debate.
Yeah, because it's part of this is the conversation. It's a nice group of people who are interested. And so we may get something out of this. So yeah, let's start with this. So the overall also I guess this is blocking things, right? Damn. Do do do. Floating me controls. Perfect. So, overall agenda. I'd like to just do a discussion of what is a mechanic in the first place, right? But kind of like the what is a game like we did last time. Um, we want to go into what makes a mechanic complex. Um, and we want to go into maybe types of complexity. I think this is interesting because it's more than just a mechanical complexity. It goes into a complexity of a thought and understanding something, which I find is interesting. And ways that maybe we could hide complexity in a way where we may have a really interesting mechanic we want to have, but maybe it's too complicated for new players, as they do in TF2, right? Um, so there are ways of like hiding it. And so a new player can enjoy the mechanic and use it and be like, oh, this is cool, right? And then eventually they will grow more experienced and familiar, and they'll be like, oh, there's way more to this than I thought there was, right? And I think that's kind of what we want. We want in the game. We want the longevity of like, this is really interesting the more I play, right? So that's the motivation. All right, just a quick review. We want to loosely define what game was. And in the sense, when a person has a meaningful goal, has to focus and learn from choices to succeed at that goal and find it fulfilling to do so in some way. Not necessarily like fun, but maybe they may find it productive and stuff. It's generally a game. And it's an interactive experience, you know this. Um, and so I just wanted to review any more thoughts after that meeting, or you just got sort of chilled with that definition, I guess? Good
I'm
enough?
good. Yeah.
Good enough?
Makes
Good
sense.
enough? Makes sense? Yeah, cool. Cool. So I wanted to go into a mechanic. So mechanics, a person can interact with the game. I guess sort of foundational principle, right? It's called the game starts in some way and ends in another way. Um, Generally, the fact that we can change something implies that there's state, right? Like let's say Mario, we start at a left and we want to go to the right, right? So we have to do something to move the character from left to right. But the thing is, at some point we were on the left, and at some point we'll be on the right. So there's some time that has to pass, right? Um, so a player can take a series of actions to change the state, and we sort of define what that is, right? Generally, we make a jump mechanic or something, and in a platformer, we move from start to finish, like very physically, right? And in a narrative, maybe you might make certain choices, right? You have to make a certain amount of choices in order to reach the end. Okay. And I always think this is interesting. I'm like, okay, well, you start somewhere, you change it, and now you have something else, right? And I feel like this sounds very familiar. Like if you're familiar with even just programming, right? Like we start with something, with some variables and rules that we set up, we change it, then we get somewhere else. Right. But it's familiar. It's something we change things over time. That's really what it comes down to. And I think we could start here. Like, when you change things over time, generally it requires some sort of energy, which is interesting. But I guess the question is, when is just a normal action we could take a mechanic? I guess like just think of a game like Mario, right? When does an action you could take become a mechanic? Like I'm asking you guys. Yeah.
It's repeatable.
Repeatable,
I'd
definitely.
say it has rules associated with it.
Rules associated, absolutely.
I think it changes what you're currently experiencing. Like if you're in a walking state and you press something that jumps,
Yeah.
you're not walking anymore.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you start jumping, I guess, right?
Yeah.
You move up, you move in a different axis. Um,
I was gonna say like an expected outcome.
yeah, definitely an expected outcome. That's sort of that consistency, right?
Yeah.
Right.
There's an aspect of strategy where like performing certain, like invoking certain mechanics can give you an edge if you do them in the right order or right time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think part of that is interesting where foundationally, the fact that we can do something, change the state, and reach the goal is what we're getting at. Because what ends up happening is that if you had Mario and you only had the jump button, you could never complete the level, right? You never could go from left to right because you're only going up and down, right? There are some actions that don't necessarily make progress. They don't, if the progress is from here to there, if you're moving on the x-axis, you're making progress in that sense, right? However, a jump mechanic, a jump is an action that moves you in a perpendicular axis, right? So that doesn't necessarily make progress, but it does let you make more progress, right? In that sense, in a series of actions, we could take certain actions that will help us make progress in the future, right? Um, so, anyways, definitely, an action itself, it's performable. You could start jumping, you could stop jumping. Like I think that's a sense of it's done over time. We don't start jumping and then go until we die. Right? We start somewhere, we end somewhere. It's repeatable, absolutely. We could take the action again at some point in time, right? Uh, which is quite handy because then a player can be like, oh, I did this before, now I could do this again, right? And I guess in that sense, it's consistent. Given the same input, we get the same output, right? Or we get similar outputs, right? Or in case of something random, maybe we know that the output, what the outputs could be, and we get something in that space, right? But definitely, if we perform something, we can tell what it does, and we know it's consistent, and we could do it again. We could start learning, right? But that's a general idea. And the actions a player can take and their results are considered mechanics. I would consider the result of that mechanic in the sense of a jump lets you jump over.
So one other way I want to think about this is like a mechanic is a way to like codify an event, something that's happening.
Mhm.
It doesn't need to be something that the player does. Like it's like you can say there are mechanics associated with enemies. Let's say the boss has like a random attack mechanic,
That's true.
which is not consistent in the way that they're attacking the same place, but it's consistent in the way that they're randomly attacking it, which is,
Yeah.
but
That's a
like
good point.
it's something that the player has little to no control over because that's a enemy mechanic, but like you're codifying something that the enemy is doing.
Mhm.
So like it essentially is like you're looking at a pattern and you're giving a name to it.
Right. And it implies, I guess part of that implies something is doing something else, right? It's like a noun verb, right? Like the rock falls, right? And that's itself repeatable and consistent if you have gravity, right? And definitely, but the opponents are definitely a great example, like we talked about last time with the rock, paper, scissors, consistency. So yeah, actions a player can take or consider mechanics, but also I think it's good to extend that to, yes, the actions opponents can take and actions that can happen repeatedly and consistently are generally mechanics. Um, and so I think this is harder to find, but I think this is interesting at least. Uh, when a mechanic influences another mechanic, generally you'll get something else. You get like a new mechanic. That's generally, I would consider that a dynamic. But I've heard that term, but it's not necessarily the term you'll find if you look it up. But I think it's interesting. Like Tetris, I think is a good example. You can move it around and you can rotate it. But the fact that you can move it around and rotate it lets you put it in different spots, right? So you get some really interesting effects. You could change things around. Anyways, but I'd argue this falls into level design, some more planning. Go ahead.
So, would you call the individual moves that a chess piece can make mechanics, and then the emergent complexity of the game as a whole a dynamic because of the way that the pieces interact with each other?
In a way, yeah. I think it's emergent in a sense. It's dynamic. It wasn't there at the start. You didn't define it that way. But the fact that it's more like if you have a board that only has some space, and you have a piece that only that can move on that space, but that space is constrained. They can only move to the edge of the board.
Mhm.
A piece can only move to the edge of the board. I think that's something that ends up being created by the fact that two things were defined, right? So.
Something if you have like I don't know if you have like a piece that like you can't move your king into because that could cause a check. I think that's closer to being like a dynamic because that's another piece that somebody else has played like forcing you to not be able to use certain mechanics.
Yeah.
Like a pin would also be something you could consider a dynamic, wherein, I mean, like,
Yeah.
you can't do one thing because it would allow for another.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
And
you
that's
being
a
constrained.
combination of this piece's moveset mechanic along with the it can't move piece's block moves mechanic.
Mhm. Right. It's like it's the result of two mechanics interacting in some way.
And
Right.
a fundamental part of like a pin is the difference in value between the two pieces involved, which would mean that, but the actual value of pieces is inherently just a thing attributed to them based on the things you can do with them. So that's just a separate result of the mechanics assigned to them as movesets.
And like something else is like, what's the difference between a rule and a mechanic?
Mm.
Because I define a mechanic as having rules attached to it, but it sounds like let's say like the mechanic with having like the pieces constrained to the board. That sounds more like a rule to me.
Yeah, there's no exact mechanic where I can be like, okay, I'm expanding to a new row on the edge of the board, like row
That's true.
like A.
That's true. Well, I guess these are things that we kind of want to fill
So,
in
like-
as we go.
Another way to define it is like mechanic is an action,
Mhm.
and like a rule is like more of a constraint on action.
That would sort of work. Or like, I guess at that point, a rock falling would not be. It would be more of a rule. So,
Well, no,
well, I guess it does act though.
it's an action where the constraint on the action is that it must take place. So there was no like leeway for the action to be different because of the way that it's constrained. But I think it's still an action, so it should be a mechanic.
Good.
I think you could actually argue in favor of a even more general definition of the word mechanic, where that actually puts mechanic and rule as being mostly synonymous, as in like you could frame it as a mechanic is any if-then relationship that is consistent and repeatable. So like if
Well, logical assumption.
if this I don't know, if a certain item in a game gets attacked, then it will explode and damage the things around it. That's a mechanic, but it's also just an if-then thing. If it gets damaged, then it will explode. And then a mechanic then would just be anything like that that's consistent that you can predict the outcome based on something that's currently happening.
That's true. Well, I guess part of that is that in order for the rock to explode, something has to hit it, right? And I guess that's the result of an
And then
action.
the mechanic that causes that is if the player hits the attack button, then the thing in front of them gets damaged.
Right.
And
Yeah.
like when programming, that's something you would consider just automatically because like any rule or mechanic that you want to put in is code. So like you're kind of treating both as the same thing at that point. So that-
Yeah, they all have to be defined at some level,
Yeah.
which as a programmer, you just define it in code. You
Yeah.
can't go less
Both
than that.
have to be defined. So like if you're programming it, you treat them as the same thing because they both have to be defined.
So does that kind of devalue the word mechanic because it's not describing something unique anymore?
Yeah, it either has a meaning or it doesn't have that meaning. Great, thanks. Perfect, Scott.
We now have like a whole spectrum of meanings to
Yeah.
assign to it. Now we can choose one that fits our conversation.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think the fact that it is so just thrown around there, like I've heard mechanics everywhere, like in that sense, because it is defined so many different ways.
Yeah,
Like,
there's a lot of like game ideas like what if the player can do this?
yes, what did the player could do?
Mechanic, I'm pretty sure that is a mechanic.
Yeah. I guess generally if the fact that if it affects the player too, I guess it's more considered more of a mechanic too, right? But yeah, well, I guess everything should affect the player in some way otherwise. I mean, you couldn't just have something happen in the background like Hitman, but um anyways.
I think the
But you
game
eventually see
Rain
that.
World has
Yes.
like an entire ecosystem being simulated in the background.
Mhm.
So like and literally just entire things like predators hunting other animals and stuff can just happen
But like you
entirely
see
off
the
camera.
effects of that eventually.
Eventually, it's at some point you will affect the player.
To some of that eventually.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's no doubt all sorts
Well-
of interactions like that happening everywhere that you won't see.
It's not like
I guess.
it's not like they're in a separate universe that you never see.
Yeah, I guess if something's happening in the background but you never see it, like
There needs to
can
be
you
a
is it
chance
really
the player
is it really a mechanic, right? Like it a chance, but even a chance is still like it's possible that you can see it. But the fact that you will never see it, it's almost like it's a different
something-
set. Like
If it's something you've never seen,
not
then you
even
can't tell the
almost
difference
never.
between it existing.
just if it's straight never,
Yeah,
then
like almost
it's
never.
not a
like,
mechanic,
Wow,
right?
I found this really rare thing. Like, you want to share that moment if you see that thing that rarely ever
Mhm.
happens. So like almost never is not the same as never.
Yeah.
So it's convergence. Anyways, that's interesting. I guess there's a property of mechanics that's directly related to a player, right? At some point, it has to affect the person playing it, right? They perceive it, right? But anyways, I'd argue this falls into level design and planning, and we could cover this more later if you're interested, right? If you want to, I was gonna do something like that, but I'm like, I just happened to think of this one, so too bad. But as uh, as mentioned before, with generally games, a player engages with the game more inside their mind, and they sort of externalize it. Oh, I want to move, so I will press the button to move, right? It's just sort of, I don't know, it's kind of trite in some way. But anyways, I always consider it like a task bot. It plays a game, but it's not thinking about it. It's just programmed to do certain things. And in that sense, we're a bit different. But consider that I talked about this earlier. A game starts and ends some way. It's temporal. It takes time, and it can take some energy to do certain actions. Sorry, we're speed running here. Anyways, mechanics. A mechanic would also be understandable. The player knows the results of taking the action, right? At least this is a slightly different version of this. This is the definition of mechanic where it's only done by a player, right? Assuming that the definition is of something a player can do, right? Then in that sense, like we can perceive the result and realize what caused that result, right? What part of the action caused that result. I know this is really theoretical, but I think it's fun to think about at least. Like, what are we really looking at here? Anyways, what makes a mechanic complex? I guess that's the question to you guys. So what makes an action from jumping to something more complex?
Maybe having different results based on other parameters.
That's true. Contextual for sure.
When you have multiple mechanics where the interaction between them creates a more complicated system.
That's
I
true.
would also like to define complex and complicated. So complex is like multiple things happening together. Complicated is just like I'd say like more like just noise to it.
It's more difficult to understand.
That's actually
I think
that's a
rough.
really good
There's, like,
definition.
multiple mechanics where their interaction between them creates a behavior that, like a new behavior that you wouldn't observe from either individual one.
That's true. I think it's definitely part of it. I love that note though. Go
It's
ahead.
like there's games where like let's say you have an attack, right?
Mhm.
It does physical damage, does fire damage, a tiny bit of ice damage, a tiny bit of lightning damage, but it's mostly physical. So like you can kind of ignore the rest
Mhm.
for the most part. And then you also have like 15 other descriptions on it that says like in this case it does this, in this case it does that, in this case it does that.
Mhm.
And like almost none of those are useful.
Mhm.
I would say that's more complicated than complex. Like there's if you
Yeah.
boil it down, you only have a physical attribute, a physical damage part of it. The rest just is noise that you don't really want to think about.
That's a
It's not-
great
it's
observation.
just a bunch of edge cases.
Complicated
Yes,
is
yeah.
artificial, complexity emerges on its own.
In a way, yeah. Okay.
I love it when I'm playing an RPG and I get like an axe that deals plus 30% more critical burning damage whenever I'm poisoned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just like all these conditionals for sure. I love that definition because I actually had that question myself, so I'm really glad you brought that up. So I do like that definition. So the complex by definition is that mean it has multiple parts, right? There are multiple mechanics. There are essentially some mechanics. But yeah, there's multiple parts to it. And I guess it's okay. I don't want to get too deep into that. But I guess if it's complex, it necessarily has more parts to it. If it's complicated, I would argue that's more hard to understand
Yeah,
and hard to use, right? Like as a player in your mind, right? So all the constraints of your mind affect the way you use the action, right? So if you had to know 100 things, but you could only know if you only remember like 7 of those things, then only those 7 things that you're actually considering when you're taking the action, right? So in that sense, we're only considering the 50% five, like we're using the magnitude difference almost,
Yeah,
but
the physical
the
damage.
we're focusing on most of the physical damage, and we're just like, oh, the extra all stuff. What's up?
I think a decent example of complexity as opposed to arbitrary complicatedness in in an actual game I've played is it's like it's a 2D platformer game and there are boxes that you can pick up and throw and jump on. And it's actually your character has the ability to grab boxes using like a cable that so you can actually jump off of a box and grab it at the same time.
Oh, neat.
But you can also jump off of boxes while they're still in the air. So an emergent behavior of that is that if you have a box, you can throw it up, jump, and then jump off of it and grab it again.
Mhm.
So it effectively you get a double jump mechanic, not mechanic, you get a double jump dynamic.
Yes, you essentially get double dynamic.
That emerges from the ability to jump off of a box,
Mhm.
throw a box, and grab a box as you jump off of it.
Right.
3 mechanics that combine into a new behavior.
I'm so glad you're using those terms.
At that point, how do you define like what's the upper bound of complexity before a mechanic becomes a dynamic? Because you can describe that as one mechanic where there's just a double jump mechanic that's implemented through this particular sequence of things happening.
It's not though.
It's like
It's
no one
implemented
wrote
through
no one
jumping
wrote
off of
double
boxes,
jump.
throwing boxes, and grabbing boxes.
Right.
Those are things that were implemented individually,
Mhm.
and then the fact that they're all there causes you to be able to do
I
that.
guess
Right.
It was actually an unintended mechanic dynamic. It was an unintended behavior by the developers.
Mhm.
The developers did not develop the game with the intention of that being possible. It was discovered by players.
And other things like whether like a mechanic is separable, like we divide the mechanic to like multiple parts. And I guess like if you go into like the give you a name to like a pattern, like mechanics can be made up of more mechanics because you just gave a name to the
Bigger
Bigger
mechanic. Yeah,
mechanic.
exactly. It's a almost like a partition. Like you take one thing and you split it into
Yeah, like
multiple parts,
sub-problems,
right? So
like
and then
that.
so this is the mechanic, this mechanic, this mechanic. But you encompass that. Oh, that's all. It's all persona or whatever, right? That's all in this one thing. Good.
I actually just realized one other thing as I was saying the thing before is that I mentioned that the double jump behavior was discovered
Mhm.
as opposed to created.
Yeah.
So like the game was created with those mechanics, and then the people playing it realized
Like, oh, that
realized
totally
things that
exists now.
happen. So if it's something that you discover, then I think it must be a dynamic.
Yeah, that's true. If you discovered it without it being defined, I guess.
Yeah, it's like a rule that
Why
comes
does
about from
why
like
does developer intent have anything to do with whether it's a mechanic or dynamic? Like, does being explicitly intentionally programmed in
You
code?
can have intentional dynamics.
Yes,
I don't think
because
you can
you
have unintentional mechanics. Unless it's a bug.
Yes. yes, yeah, this is a bug
Yeah,
exactly.
if we're defining mechanic the way we are,
Yeah, in this very specific case, for sure. In terms of specific actions, and I think definitely something you discover as a developer. You're constantly like testing your game, and often you'll see the dynamics, and you'll be like, oh, maybe I could use this, right? That's generally it's a process of using that dynamic, right?
and after a while, you just kind of treat it as like something
Yeah.
that always existed.
Exactly, you just treat it as mechanic, even though it's dynamic. But I think this is sort of why I think it's interesting. Just having words to describe things is really useful. Um, anyways, yeah, what makes the game complex? I kept it really simple. I'm just like, oh, literally, if you take a sentence and you split it into multiple parts, oh, it's a complex sentence, and that's compound in the sense of there are multiple parts, right? You combine this and this with and, right? Cool. Um, anyways, I think is interesting. It takes mental energy to think about some mechanics, and that's part of the complicatedness. Um, and you can only have so many mechanics at one time for a player to reasonably interact with, right? In the sense of if it takes energy and we only have so much energy, and we have limitations of our brain and the way we act, right? Unless for Cyberpunk's 2077, the future. There's only so many mechanics you have at one time. So what I've done before in the past is split things into stages or like split things at different times, right? So after this, we're using this different set of mechanics. That's possible, but it's just being aware that's being transitioned. Anyways. Cool. So I guess when you're thinking of mechanics to add to your game, what do you end up doing? I guess as a team collab, if that's a thing.
Let's choose a theme first.
Yeah. Cool.
Snowball.
Snowball. Okay.
That has multiple meanings.
Makes me think of like a game where you snowball, like either you literally roll or you're
Anyone think game a good snowman is hard to build?
no, that sounds cute though.
Well, I was thinking you can throw the snowball.
You could throw a snowball for sure.
You could make the snowball bigger, like you
That's
like roll it around.
That's true. That's true.
Throwing a snowball downhill should make it bigger automatically.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you want to be part of it, you could just have like a snowball where you throw it and then it just poof, right?
True.
But that's technically fits the snowball definition, right? But I guess like you could think of any mechanic you want. And I guess the question is this complicated, or can I teach this as a player, right? I guess I'm going to more into complicatedness rather than complexness.
Yeah.
So I apologize for that distinction, but yeah, this is
And that's something we decided here.
yeah, I think it's just good to know. Anyways, what would make a mechanic complicated for a new player? At least if you're throwing a snowball and you're trying to tell the player you can throw a snowball, what may make that complicated? Like
So instead of just pressing a single button, then just throw it where you're looking. You have to hold down a button to like prep it, and then you have to press down another button to like actually throw
And
it.
swing your camera.
it's like your camera.
Yeah, you have to move your camera.
You have to like mash keys on your keyboard to make the motion of your
Yeah. So you think
Build the snowball.
yeah, you gotta build a snowball. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Oh no, you hit the remote against the TV and you destroy everything.
So like another way to define is that there's a lot of indirection. Like it's not direct where you just like I want to throw the snowball and you click the button and throw the snowball. I have to go through a whole ritual.
Yeah, you have a whole freaking thing you have to remember.
The game getting over.
Yes, it is a bit of a getting over a thing. Well, I guess the mechanic is like you just push it, but even then, it's still kind of a weird mechanic.
I think getting over it actually does pretty well on the using a simple mechanic to get complex dynamics emerging from it aspect.
For sure. Like you could just define,
point to where you want your hammer to go.
yeah, you push,
then-
and then that's it.
And then from that you get push off jumping, pull up jumping, like all sorts of other things you can do with it.
Yeah, it's really interesting how that works, right? So, anyways, yeah. So I guess in terms of comparing the more complex mechanic in terms of the less complex mechanic, indirection, right? As you were saying before.
Yeah.
So, like, if you add like a bunch of steps to a mechanic, I guess it feels more complex,
And
or it
so-
feels more
and
complicated,
also,
rather.
going back to like the 50 modifiers thing, but one is only one of them is useful. Like
Right.
it takes a lot of work to filter out the things that are not useful. So,
Mm-hmm.
that's also indirection, but like it's kind of like horizontal indirection because like you're not going through a ritual. It's not like a whole process. It's like a process that you can just ignore 50, like half of the steps in.
Mhm.
So like you're spending a lot of time figuring out what's not figuring out like what's the actual useful thing out of this mechanic. What's the mechanic behind the supposed mechanic of this weapon or something like that. So like it's another form of indirection, I'd say.
Right. It's extra stuff generally.
Exactly.
Well, I guess we could generally say something more complex is generally more complicated in that sense.
Yes.
Anyways, I feel
But,
Snoozeville, I'm so
Playing events
sorry.
generally involve more steps.
Yeah,
It's, like, more
yeah.
complex.
Like literally, like I think they're just so related that I feel like it's really easy to get them confused, which is why I think it's super useful to define it like that. So I guess part of the point is that it's interesting because a player who would find that second mechanic or that snowball really complex, and an experienced player would eventually get used to it, right? They'd find it eventually simple. They'd be able to they'd form certain habits and get used
another
to.
way to define this is like, or like example of this is like, let's say you have like a movement system. You can make a movement system that's complex or complicated
Mhm.
or simple.
Mhm.
But like also you can also have like say like an AI system that can be complex, simple, or complicated as well. But like usually it's more on the side of like being complex because AI is usually more complex. With like movement, let's say if you have complicated movement, you have to press like 50 buttons to move. That's complicated, not really complex, because like you're still doing like a simple action of moving.
Mm.
Well,
Simple, but, like
The game WAP, like QWOP, where you have to actually control the knee and hip joints of the guy. to throw.
Oh yeah. The running game.
That's an example of a game that's like complicated, not really complex,
Mhm.
but still kind of fun to play.
Mhm.
The fact that it is complicated is the fun part,
Yeah.
right? It is like just
The-
trying to figure out this
the
weird
game might-
system.
the game could be.
Yeah,
I'm not familiar with the game, but like the game could be complex, but the
Complex.
movement itself is complicated.
Fun because of the complicatedness, not rather than needing to be fun despite the complicatedness.
That's true.
The game itself isn't actually fun, but it is fun to watch other people on YouTube play it and scream bloody murder about it.
That's
That's
true.
fun.
I think just figuring out a system can be pretty fun in its own way. Just something that we see as complex and we see as something that we can learn, and then we eventually
Yeah, you have
learn
to
all the
be-
parts of it, and we achieve something.
Don't a lot of like really good and popular games to an extent make a complex mechanic feel simple to a new player, and then once you become more experienced,
Yes.
it feels more complex.
That's exactly what we're getting to. Interestingly enough, it's possible for a mechanic to feel simple to a new player, but make it more complex to a experienced player, which is kind of the point of the thing. I think it's interesting how that works.
Something crossed my mind. So earlier you mentioned Tetris as an example of like emergent complexity where you can, if you combine moving pieces and rotating them, you can do interesting maneuvers. But I realized that Tetris's rotation system is actually really complicated, not emergent complexity, but just straight up has a bunch of specification. It's basically a giant table
Mhm.
of different piece types and then different states they could be in a 4x4 grid.
It is
And
complex
the-
for sure.
What?
It's complex, isn't it? Or you think it's
I'd say complicated is the word.
well, I guess there's a thing of the
Like-
complexity of doing the action, the complexity of the results of the
the
action
complex,
itself
like,
too.
the mechanic is rotating it. The complicated is like there's a billion rules associated
Yeah,
with
Right.
rotating.
yeah.
They-
So
yeah.
so like what I'm saying is that it's a bunch
Many
of
different terms.
specifically set rules in the game that are meant to simulate the simple idea of rotating a piece. But
Yeah.
it's just that the fact that you have that underlying complicated rule set,
Yeah.
it sort of
Well-
simulates simplicity with complicatedness. And there are some kind of unintuitive results that come out of that. Like it's actually possible to rotate and the S pieces that's like
Yeah.
zigzag sort of thing. And they're like 180-degree rotationally symmetric. So if you rotate them twice, it'll look the same.
Mhm.
But it's actually possible to spin them into a like slot but only if they're in one of those orientations. Like if you rotate it 180, it'll look the same, but it won't be able to be spun into that spot.
Oh, interesting.
And that's something that comes, that's a mechanic, a dynamic that comes out of the fact that it's, the system of just simple idea of rotating piece is actually being backed by an inherently complicated set of rules.
Yeah. The thing is, I would, I guess we might need a new term for this, honestly. Like, because it's something that's complexity wise, like you do need to define most of the states, right?
Hidden complicatedness. Because like most players, you don't really care about the cases because I think it's rotating instead of like being set to a whole different state based on the current state.
Like defining it is simple, but there are a lot of different results.
Like, you can always have a complex game that's simple for a new player and complex for an experienced player. That's kind of like this case. Like it becomes complex and complicated because you're now needing to make use of those underlying rules that weren't supposed to be taken advantage of. Like I'd say it's like kind of like an implementation detail. Like
I feel like the word in 2025, I think it's tech. It's like, oh,
It is tech. It is
I
tech.
found some new tech.
Yeah, new tech in that sense, right? Yeah. Well, I guess knowing that it exists and acting on it, it's kind of complicated. It's well, because you need to know that it can rotate into that spot in that certain orientation,
and like
and you need to be able to do that
you can
physically.
You can implement like a Tetris piece rotating in a lot of ways. Like if you're in Unity and you're using physics, you just set the X value of the Z value to like let's say 90.
Yeah. So by definition, it is.
But the question is, what
Simple.
pivot does it rotate around?
Or
Yeah.
or I guess it's only like
And what do you do if the new position you rotate into conflicts with existing pieces?
Mhm.
That's really what the rotation system is meant to handle.
good.
There's also like Celeste. They have the wave dash and the corner jump, which were unintentional, and then in the DLC chapter 9, they made it a forced mechanic you have to learn, and it's awful to learn at first. Once you learn it, it feels like way back.
Which
Replay the whole
which
game,
one?
like,
Or what was
that'd be a dynamic.
what was the mechanic? Sorry,
So you jump, you diagonal dash it into the ground, and then you jump again. You get an insane like speed boost.
Oh, I didn't even know
Yeah.
that. That's funny.
If you jump at the corner of a wall, it like dashes you upwards and bounces you around, and it gives you a ton of
Well,
points.
it's sort of like
That's
a consequence of the fact that inherently dashing increases your speed for a short window of time, but then the act of stopping the dash also cancels out that speed. But when you, I guess, end it early by dashing into the ground and jumping, it retains that speed. It doesn't get the chance to cancel.
Oh.
That a similar sort of dynamic emerges in the game I mentioned earlier, where the double jump, the same game with the double jump on boxes. There's a power up that lets you do a sort of similar to Celeste dash, where it'll make you go really fast for a short distance and then stop you. And
You can
there's
do a topic
also
almost.
there's a block that if you can walk through it, but it'll remove your power up. So if you use the dash power up into that block, it'll get rid of the power up while you're still moving really fast, and you'll get launched because it won't cancel your velocity.
Interesting. I'm sorry.
More
You know, like
instances of immersion.
I always do this when I'm like pseudo presenting. I have a harder time thinking about things because I'm just too busy like worrying about like, okay, do I do next? Like, oh shit. So I understand. But yeah,
Well, complexity and complicatedness, like they both exist. You can't have a complex mechanic that's not complicated. To some degree, I'd say.
you cannot have a complex that is not complicated.
Yeah, complex.
You can if you only use part of the complex, or if a player only needs part of the complex mechanic.
Wouldn't that just
Like
it's
Tetris.
indirect? No?
No,
I
not
think-
necessarily.
Complicatedness is imposed by the developer, as in they put a bunch of rules in place.
Yeah,
Complexity comes out of the interaction of simple things,
Yeah, that's one way to put it.
potentially simple things.
Especially in the case where these mechanics aren't things that are directly controlled by the player. Like if you have AI powered other, NPCs walking around, that's an immensely complex system that isn't really complicated in the way that it faces the player. Because
They just see it.
they're just making a small limited number of
Yeah.
relatively simple interactions with an
Yeah, the
immensely
interacting
complex
with like
thing.
the surface of it.
Mhm.
Conway's Game of Life is a fundamentally simply defined thing
Yeah.
from which emerges complexity
Complex,
that
yes.
isn't programmed into the system, but rather just comes out of it as a consequence of the simple rules or simple mechanics.
So it's almost like the dynamic itself, the dynamic that's created is complex.
Yeah.
Rather, so like you have a simple mechanic and the
Dynamics
dynamic
are
can be.
complex rather than mechanics. Mechanics can be simple or complicated. Dynamics can be complex.
Really easy example for just like something that's
That's
like
true,
simple to a
but-
new player and then like
Yeah.
complex for somebody who's experienced. I think like if we go back to Mario, how long you hold the A button controls how high you jump. So like if you're somebody who's new, like never played a video game
You just
before, you're
press
just
the
gonna
button.
always press
You
the
just
button
tap
for
it.
as long as possible and jump as high as possible. But if you're like somebody who's speed running the game, you know like, oh, I have to short jump here to not hit like a Goomba or something.
Right. Or you
That's
could, or you could,
complicated rather than complex. Because that's the thing that you have to specifically program it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Whereas
More
like
conditions.
there's
it's honestly both. It's honestly, it's like, it's the fact that you can change how your jump is more complex. But and then the fact that you have to understand that
It adds
activate
depth to what you're
is
doing.
complicated.
You can have both complexity and complicatedness at the same time. Like
yes, I think complexity can emerge from simple or complicated rules.
if you if you make something complicated without adding complexity, then that's bad. I'd
Yeah,
say.
that's bad. But I have another example from that same game
Sure.
I was just talking about. So regarding the jump height adjustment thing, the way that game implements jump height adjustment is when you press jump, it'll give you some amount of velocity. And if you keep holding jump, it'll just amount to a jump. But if you let go early, it'll actually cancel that velocity in order to make you have a lower jump. Now the way that works is it actually, once you've jumped off of the ground, it'll keep track of that fact and remember to cancel your upward velocity when the next time you let go of the button. But what that means is you can actually do a full jump, keep holding that button, and then land on something like an enemy that bounces you upwards. And then if you let go of it, then you'll still lose your
You'll still
upward
drop.
velocity.
Still, oh, that's neat.
So you could get launched vertically by something that you shouldn't be able to cancel, but you still can cancel it because of how it was implemented.
That's a bug.
It's technically, but it's only a bug if the developer didn't find it and they didn't intend to use it, right? Because you can make a challenge based off of that. It's like, oh, it was.
If the developer gets rid of it, then it's a bug.
If the developer decided,
It's a yeah, it's not a bug. It's a feature. It's a feature, right?
I think it's used in a lot of levels
Yeah.
The
now.
difference between like a bug and a feature is whether it's intended.
Yeah, yeah. It is
Or
developer
whether
intent.
They decided it's intended in retrospect.
Yes.
Whether they they intentionally kept it, like added it in or kept it.
It's a
Right,
bug
right.
if the developer finds out about it and then says it's a bug.
Yeah. But it definitely tends to be like, okay, the more complex I make this thing, or I make doing this thing, the more complicated it ends up being. But I guess the fact is, it's interesting where something that is inherently complex does not have to be complicated. It's something, and I guess vice versa. Someone that's
It's really chess isn't say complicated, but it's really complex.
at some point there's a lot of different pieces with different moves in
It's not
different
like
places.
the rules
It's fun.
change ever. Like, you just have a
There's some weird. There are some obscure rules, like I mean, just castling
Yeah.
onto something.
Yeah.
Knight promotion.
but like
En passant.
you effectively always have those rules in place.
Yeah.
And the game hasn't really become more.
There's also the you can't
Yeah.
castle through check. That's a more obscure rule.
I also want to just say, I think this is the most obvious thing to me when I think of this. I think of someone who was using a set of actions, goes to another game, and is like, this is different, right? Like, I guess when you learn a new program and you're like, oh, I know how to do this one. I've learned all the complexities. It's simple now. In terms of I'm able to use it. I'm familiar with it, and then you go to this other program, and even though it's simpler, like in terms of complexity, it's like literally simpler. If it's differently structured, then it may be complicated to someone who's already experienced another thing,
Yeah.
which is really interesting.
If you're considering like existing like experiences, also new conditions to consider.
Right. So I think that's like for me the most obvious thing. Oh yeah, this someone who's experienced with something like this may not be super who may not feel or may feel this more
Like,
complicated.
there's a lot of like Tetris games where like they keep all the quirks of the original, so like it's not unfamiliar to a new player. But like if you make a Tetris game that doesn't keep all the cards and you give it to like an experienced player,
You're like, what?
they're gonna struggle with it.
They're gonna really struggle. But I did this because I thought I'm so used to doing it. Like, you know. Yeah, but I guess
Else.
all right, let's go. Sorry, it's really I want to get to this because I think this is really interesting. Maybe we could define things better from here on out, right? So this is a really useful property. Cool, we know this. All right. So when is a mechanic complex to a player? I want to discuss 3 things that really stuck to me in some way when I first read them. So I think maybe you guys will appreciate this. Okay. So I think there is a comprehension complexity. I think there is a board complexity, which generally refer to tracking complexity. And there's a strategic complexity in terms of usage, generally. So, memes, stock photos, guys.
You cooked them.
Oh yeah.
Get
So,
the water.
oh no. Okay, here you go. Yeah, I just left it. It's fine. So just like 5 seconds of Google search. Don't worry. Comprehension complexity. This is something that I found really interesting. So a player can have a hard time comprehending a mechanic. I think the simplest way I think about it is just if you try to explain something to a player, will they understand it or not? Right. Just imagine like you see a weapon and it has 50% this and you just whatever the player sees and how they try to understand
You
it.
just
Right?
see a whole textbook.
Thing. Yes. And you see a whole textbook. You're like, huh? Anyway, okay.
Games where the tutorial is just a giant pop-up with a wall of text.
Yeah. This is what we're going to right now. So
Refer to the ownership manual.
yes. So for comprehension complexity, so the first thing we want to cover, it is possible that a mechanic says it will change something that is unknown to you. Where, if you play this card, this thing will change. What is that thing?
You'll get +10 mana.
Yeah. So
You haven't used the mana yet.
did it happen? Like what's mana? Like what the hell is that? I didn't realize that. But I guess the simplest thing, what's it called? Add a card to the stack. What the fuck is the stack? Excuse me. But and yeah, this is Magic the Gathering, by the way. So a player sees this, and this is a really simple statement. Like the actual way it's defined is simple. However, it's referred to something else that is complex, right? Like it's knowing what the stack is, or knowing what the stack is. Let me start that. So you define it and you try to explain it simply, but you're depending on something that may or may not be simple, right? If the stack is just like, oh, then it's just do this. It's like, oh, just put it on top of here. Okay, sure, right. But it may have a bunch of rules to it that may make it complex, and now the player has to know both of those, right? It's sort of a dependency in that.
Yeah, to understand this, you have to understand this. You have to understand this. You have to
Yeah.
understand this.
It's the tooltips inside of tooltips inside of tooltips inside of tooltips. You know, like
Yeah.
you just move a unit on top of the land. What the hell's land? Hold up.
So just like if you make a mechanic dependent on another mechanic, you're also making your knowledge of that mechanic dependent on the knowledge
On the other mechanic. Yes, exactly. You're defining multiple mechanics.
It's like you get
One-
you have like one page, like a notebook page, like or like let's say like
Trying to read any Wikipedia article about a math topic, and it's
and then all the other things you blew away.
Yeah, all the things you had to learn about. Like, oh shit.
eigenpolymorphism, whatever. I just threw together math nonsense.
Yeah.
like you have a sticky note saying that you have a new idea for a mechanic. It's like it's a sticky note. How complex can it be? Then you realize there's something on that sticky note. It's like, what the heck is this thing?
Yeah.
Oh, here's another sticky note for this, and then you just have a whole.
It is hilarious. But I guess like the player's like, what's that? Or like they'll be like, oh, now I have to go learn this now. So I was like, great. So it sort of defers the problem really. Like so you're like, oh well, let me simplify my game. I'm gonna make a mechanic, or I'm gonna make the bleed mechanic, right? And now like, oh, this weapon causes bleed. It's like, what the fuck is bleed? Right? They have to go figure that out because it may be different in your context, right?
And the fun things like games define bleed differently because there's like some games that it's a damage over time. You lose health over time.
Some games it's like you can't heal until it's gone.
That's
Some it's like you take increased damage.
Yep.
Or some is just bonus damage.
And I've seen all 3 of those.
Bleed mechanic, where having the bleed effect just means you're more susceptible to the poison effect.
Useful. I don't yeah.
And your weapon does 10 extra physical damage.
Oh yes, useful. Yes.
And you get a bonus on intimidation.
That's true, yeah. Absolutely. I guess when that tends to happen when you try to like extract something, I think generally what you're doing is you're trying to show the player that this is consistent. You know what I mean? Like in terms of mechanic, maybe you'll see like multiple cards or multiple attacks have the same bleed thing, right? And you're like, oh, if I know what bleed is, I will understand most of these things, right? So in a sense, it defers the problem, but it can also help the problem if
Yeah.
the mechanic itself was not seen as consistent in the first
I
place.
don't know what
right?
like the term for this is, but like I personally like consider like keywording.
Keywording,
Like,
yeah.
keywording a mechanic, you're giving it a definition.
Mhm.
And I've seen that in a lot of like let's say RPG games, strategy games. Like there's now a bleed mechanic that's always defined this way, and it will never change.
Right,
And like,
right.
if I add any more similar mechanics to this in the future, it won't be a new mechanic. It will be this mechanic. So like,
It-
you know what you know.
Yeah, what you
they
don't
have
know.
a way of making it like strongly identifiable, where it's like whenever
Right.
you see this bleed, it makes the text like bright red. So
Yeah.
this applies bleed just in bright red, so it's recognizable to other things you've seen that like reference bleed.
Yeah, it turns into its own like thought. Like this bleed is its own thing,
Yeah, it's
right?
only
And
definition.
then you're using bleed to define something else. And I think what makes it interesting is that you're both making it more consistent, but as a side effect, or as something that you can do intentionally, something that is named bleed may mean something more than something that is not named bleed, right? In a sense of in natural language, if I tell you someone's bleeding, I sort of have an idea what that means. And for a player, they may be able to make a stronger association with that, right?
One thing about like keywording is that you always have to use that keyword in the same way.
Yeah.
So like
You're defining consistency. That's the whole point. Like,
You can't have any
it's
variation.
yeah.
But you might have games where like you have let's say you have like the mechanic bleed and then you have like let's say sort of bleeding that just does extra
Oh,
damage.
yeah, God, that's so annoying. I hate that. Yeah, when you describe things in
Because,
different
like,
ways, I was like, oh.
Someone else on the designer team didn't realize bleed was a mechanic and now they added a way where it's like not referencing the existing mechanic, it's just like describing the items like does extra damage.
Mhm.
Or like
Yeah. Well, I guess instead of saying Mario moves up and down, you can say Mario jumps, right? And that's like, okay, great. Keyword, go ahead.
There's an item in Terraria called the Lucky Horseshoe, and there's also a system where items can have like modifiers applied to them that change their stats, and it takes the form of a different word, an adjective appended to the name.
yeah.
One of which modifier words is lucky.
Lucky. Oh, great.
Lucky,
Oh, lucky.
horseshoe.
Yeah, great.
That
Thanks.
just changes the stats.
That happens.
Lucky horseshoe.
Yes, that happens.
That's what I was
It's
trying to
so
go for.
confusing.
It's a completely different.
It's
And-
it's
and-
compli-
a
it's
lucky horseshoe
unnecessarily
doesn't have lucky
complicated.
modifier.
It's
There's no horseshoe.
unnecessarily
Yeah.
complicated. That's
It would be worse if there was a horseshoe item that you could enchant with lucky,
Because,
and
like-
have a lucky horseshoe and a lucky horseshoe with completely different effects.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That'd be funny.
okay. Sweet. Thank you, guys. So let's. I don't want this to be literally forever. I'm so sorry. Okay. Next thing we want to cover. So I would consider that comprehension complexity. I have a hard time. Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead.
We stretch this down a bit more. Comprehension complexity also includes like reversing the controls. Like it's not simple. I mean,
Yes.
it's very simple actually. If you
You can
like,
find it simply. Yeah.
like if you like take the game itself in a void, like you don't have any knowledge of any other game,
Mhm.
why wouldn't S be the forward button?
Right. It's confusing. Right.
It's
Like.
not confusing if that's
Convention complexity.
It's convention. Yeah.
Like most games expect WASD.
Right. Right.
like if you
It's
never
good transferring
played
that
a
knowledge.
WASD game,
S be forward, A be down, and caps lock.
because like that, like if ever use Vim, it has everything on one row. So like what's forward?
Do you use WASD in Vim?
I don't use Vim,
Okay.
but like that's the thing that's like, I don't understand this. You like don't know how to move.
Well, that's actually
Yes.
just a separate convention. Like they used to
It
make
is a
keyboards
convention,
with
but
arrows
convention
on
complexity is a good way to
now.
describe this. It's like I don't
It's an
understand this
archaic
because it's
convention made
something I
not-
don't recognize.
Right. Right.
Like, convention of like L2 aims on a controller and R2 shoots. Like if you put it backwards, it would confuse a lot of people
Yeah.
who are playing your shooter.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, and that's sort of that. It's unnecessarily complicated.
Yeah.
Like, because now I have to make a new association, right?
It's only complicated in comparison to existing games.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
If
yeah.
it was someone new to video games, they wouldn't have any
Yeah,
like different amount of difficulty.
Like, we're literally defining it's something for experienced players, something complicated for experienced players.
Weird
And then,
I've seen is like some people
before new
invert their
players.
mouse control, like so up is down,
Yeah.
but that's normal for anyone who's like played Flight Simulator.
Yes, right. That tends to happen. People switch from Flight Simulator, like, oh, I like that, right? But it's interesting how like transfers between games in a way, like just being aware of what exists and what people play is useful. But anyways, we have three more of these. There you go. So let's go. So it's possible that a mechanic is ambiguous. It can be interpreted in multiple ways, and this can happen a lot. Where you're like, oh, this means this. It's like, but that could mean like four other things. Like, oh shoot. So I guess like this is just a silly example I happened. The player with less than 10 health heals too, but like, what if there's more players? Like, what is that? Like, what happens? I don't know the result of that action, and so like, as a player having to make that action, I'm like, do I want to do this or do I not want to do this? I don't know. Like, maybe it'll heal all of us. Maybe it'll heal me. Maybe it'll,
And to
I
take
don't know.
an
Like,
example from Path of Exile, Path of Exile has a term where it's like there's two conditions that are very similar: when you take damage and when you get hit. What's the difference?
yeah, it seems ambiguous.
So
Hit
damage.
mitigation, I would assume.
No, it's completely unrelated. So that's why it's ambiguous.
Is
Yes.
it possible to get hit without taking damage, like
Yeah.
a Minecraft snowball?
That also, but you can also take damage without getting hit.
Like AoE type thing?
So
Poison,
the
burn.
poison,
yeah,
poison will damage you, but it will not hit
I
you.
hit you. Interesting, but you can define it to hit you if you want, but in that game it didn't.
And it sometimes will because like you can have a skill that applies a hit that applies a poison, but the poison doesn't hit you,
Thanks.
but it does
The-
damage.
The thing that hits you that also applies.
Yeah.
So like there's separate concepts completely. You can have one
It's,
without another.
Mhm.
It makes sense, but like no one understands it the first time,
Mhm.
which is exactly what this problem is.
Right. And it's just like the first time you'll see a player be like this, like, what? And you'll see that in tutorials too. It's just like, what do you mean by that? I don't know what you mean. It could be this, it could be this. I don't know.
There's
Like,
mechanic
like,
where it says like you can evade being hit.
yes.
You can't evade being like taking damage.
It's like-
So like if there's an enemy, if there's like burning ground on the ground, you can't evade that burning ground.
I think if you can say like if you're writing something like that, I'd like make the word hit like bold and then like a different color.
Yeah. They try to do it.
underline it.
They try to do it. They try to do that in Path of Exile, but it just
They do the
Ah.
tooltips and tooltips thing where you hover over the tooltip,
Yeah.
it'll explain exactly what unhit it means, but no one,
Yes.
expects that problem.
Sorry, but the problem exists between the keyboard and the player.
Okay, but I just we're just going through the things that are possible, and maybe we can find more. But
Yeah.
I think this is interesting to think about. But yeah, if the stakes are low enough, often the player will just skip the tutorial or skip through the thing, and they'll just try it, right? They'll just be like, all right, great, does this work? Does it not work? Yeah, I'm sorry, this is very long.
No, it's fine.
Hopefully it's interesting. Hopefully it's fun at least. Come on. It's a different way of thinking at least. So yeah, generally people will skip or will just try something that they don't understand because they need to know what's going to happen, right? If it's consistent and they know you can try it again, then they're like, all right, I'll just try it. So those are the first two. Next one is a mechanic changes you didn't expect, changes something you didn't expect it to,
Yeah.
right? There is something that you did not know it would affect, right? And you see it affects it and you're like, why, right? So generally that happens if there's too much to understand. There's just like this and this and this and this and this. But I forgot this happened, right? Like I forgot, this like tiny little thing that it changed that I didn't really know. I didn't really like understand that it would do that. But it's like,
Oh wait, I take 5% more lightning damage if I have this item equipped.
what? Yeah. And you're just like, well, what does that lead to in a sense, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't. There's so many things that could change, and you're just like, excuse me, I don't really know. And it's just like, in Path of Exile, it's just a perfect case study for Path of Exile, I think. Just for all of these in a really funny way where you can get really familiar with it, but it's really easy to get overwhelmed. There's too much that it's being changed. So generally you're like, oh, keep a mechanic simple, but it could be complicated. Or it could be complex, really. It just needs to be not complicated, right? So yeah, so comprehension, and this is the one that that really stuck with me. So comprehension complexity, I generally associate with this. The mechanic changes something you would never want to do. It lets you do something you never ever want to do. Why would I want to go backwards if I only need to go forwards to reach my goal, right? And I guess sometimes you'll see in card games, you'll lose the game, or like you'll discard your hand, or do something ridiculous, or in a way, just anything that seems perpendicular or even backwards, right? Like, oh, lose a health, or where it's interesting, in a sense where a player is assuming that, oh, you're giving me these actions to reach this goal, right? And you're supposed to these are supposed to like make progress towards the goal,
I'm trying to
right?
think of an example of this.
Yes.
I just thought of something that maybe that might not be an example directly of this, but is a sort of interesting just examples I think is kind of related. You guys know about the game Inscription?
Yeah.
Okay, so you know the Gecko card? It's a card that you can play without having to get rid of any of your other cards, which most cards require you to sacrifice cards you already have, play them. The Gecko card doesn't. But it also like doesn't do anything.
Yeah, it has like zero. It's like 0-0-0-1 or something.
Not,
Like,
not 0-0. It
okay.
can't have 0 health.
Yeah.
It probably is like 0 damage, 1
I
health.
guess, yeah.
But
something
take
that
up space.
it just looks useless.
Right.
But then what you might eventually realize is that it's possible to apply like the modifiers that the
Mhm.
game allows you to add to cards. to
Right.
it. And then it becomes actually a really powerful card because it lets you use those modifiers without having to sacrifice any of your other cards, which most cards require you to.
I also think, when I play the game, I just use it as a sacrifice. So I'm gonna play it and sacrifice it.
Yeah, generally it's a sacrifice.
What'd you say?
The scroll, yeah, generally the scrolls
Oh,
are
that's
yeah.
true.
Same idea. But I guess if there was no reason to ever play a scroll, or even have a scroll in your hand, you player gets it and you're like,
And I guess
Why?
another example of this is like the 50 modifiers thing, as I was talking about. Like, there's 50 modifiers, there's only one useful. Like,
Mm.
Path of Exile also has this problem where, like, there's like, you reflect 10 damage when you get hit.
Mhm.
10 damage is ridiculously low in a game where the numbers are in the thousands.
Mhm.
So, like, it does exist purely as a bad modifier.
Mhm.
That's actually why they kept it in the game, actually.
Yeah, and the player sees that and you're like, why? Like, why is that on the thing? Why is that a modifier?
And players get confused because they try to go for it and maximize it, thinking that they can actually
Do something with it.
Like,
In Silksong, there's the crests, and I don't know why the crests change your down pogo, like when you
I
swing
can't
down.
use Crest of the Beast, man.
Mhm.
That's what I was gonna say. There's
Yeah.
crests that when you down pogo to the left, instead of sending you down and to the left, it sends you to like the left and then down, and it makes
like a
every
weird
single platform
arc.
section almost impossible.
Wow.
Like it is, I don't even know how it got.
I
through,
like the
development.
idea behind the bind behavior of Crest of the Beast, but the down thing made it
It's
at the end of the
impossible to
day,
get through
I
platforming. Like,
did
you
not
just
use it
can't.
at all.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's really interesting because you see the crest and you're like, well, this is a crest. It must be a good thing, right? Because all the other ones seem consistently, the other ones were good. The other ones were helping me. And you get this, and you're just like, this is supposed to help me. So it must help me, right? Because you're assuming that the developer made a game where the things that you could do are useful, right? You're like, well, you believe that, oh, I could take this action and everything before was useful, and they clearly intended this to be useful.
Yeah.
And you have this belief that you're like, this has to be true. And then you hear something, you're like, and you see the next thing, you're just like, well, that's not helping me. Right? And you're just, and your mind is, you just reject the thought because you're just like, well, it's a contradiction. Like, this has to help me. Right.
Yeah.
But this thing is not helping me. This is not and you're just like, you just toss the thought away and you come back to it. And you're just like, what can I do with this? Because it must be helpful,
Yeah,
right?
I-
It must be. That's the.
I had like twice trying to unequivocate into a bench. I felt like a game journalist. I was like, I'm running into a damn bed.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Son.
Oh no.
Didn't get to the tutorial.
Oh no.
I think it's probably something that you could get good at using if you actually dedicate a bunch of time to it and get skilled at it, but like there's too much of a
Buried entry.
buried entry to actually getting good use out of it, unless you just avoid down attacking, which
Right.
you end up
Maybe,
doing a
like,
lot of down attacking.
Maybe on like
Yeah.
bosses it wouldn't be so bad because there's such a big hitbox. Maybe I never tried it on boss. I was not.
Yeah.
Like at that point, just stick with the regular one
I
because
know.
you already know
Depends
that
on the
works.
boss, because like the healing mechanic requires you to be able to consistently get a bunch of hits in it. Okay.
Yeah, that's true too. Yeah,
It's gonna be a long one. I'm sorry, guys.
It's a weird.
Yeah,
We
but
just like
yeah.
looking.
Which is yeah. Well, I kind of want this to be like a club where we just chat about things like this. I think it's interesting. But yeah, totally. So you realize, oh, this has to be useful, and you want it to be useful. But imagine like as a player, you like either spend like real money, or you spend like a lot of time to complete something, and your reward is like, well,
Like-
this seems useless, right?
Like you're trying to work towards something that you think is useful, but
Yes.
the game's like, oh, by the way, this actually does nothing.
Yes, and you're just like you're left kind of disappointed. You expected something that would be useful and helpful, but you got something that isn't. And so as copium, I guess, right? As like the cognitive dissonance, it's just like, well, now I had to use it because I spent time getting it, right?
I think I used to play Hearthstone. Hearthstone has a
Yeah.
lot of cards that are literally exactly like
Yeah.
some of them are literally like discard all your cards. And you're like, why would I ever want to do that?
Mhm.
And you discard all your cards, your minions on the board. Each time one's discarded, they get +1/+1. Now you have 5 minions that are like 25/25. You instantly win the game on the next.
Yeah, well,
So-
yes. So we can actually go into that next time. But different players are interested in different things. And I would say combos like that really appeal to a player who want to use something that feels like it should be losing.
Yeah.
They want to prove something in a sense where they're like, oh, I could use this card. I could lose the game. I'll give this to the enemy. I'll give this lose the game card to the enemy. And they'll fucking play it. They'll like it. And the thing is allowing that in your game is can be add a lot to it.
Yeah.
Like at least different players can find different things in your game,
Like
right?
something I found out recently is that someone played the entire like Path of Exile game without gear.
Even like gems, I guess I get wow.
Gems, yes, like
Okay,
they have
you have to have
gems, but
something.
they don't have a weapon. So they just go through a game designed about getting gear
Getting gear.
without gear.
That's true. Yeah, it's playing like Diablo, getting loot, and then you never use loot. It was like great.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing with Diablo loot is that 80% of it is garbage, and you're just fishing for like the one,
Mhm.
like the
They
one
miss you with that,
million
yeah.
purple thing that you get, or like the one item that has that one specification that works with your build.
Yeah, I mean that's sort of like a it's almost like it's loot, right? It's the sense of it's yeah, it's gambling. The thing is, at some point you can get it, right? Like so you're working towards it. Anyways, it's the same thing with Passive Exile, same vibe. Anyways, I call this the old man yells at cloud syndrome. Why do these young ones do these things? And it's just like. Well, they never think that they want to do it. Like why would anyone ever want to do that? They see something, it's like, why? Why does this
Sure.
punk have these things? You know, like and it's like, I'm expressing
And
my
now you're-
personality.
You also want to like spend a few hours trying to research that possibility that this does actually do something.
Right? Yeah, and sometimes they don't want to do that. They're stuck in their ways.
And Path of Exile has a ton of those traps to fall into.
Mhm.
It's like this is useful for that one build. One build.
One very specific build that you have to know about, otherwise it's useless. Okay, so I think that's comprehension complexity, but really it's just there is one mechanic that you're looking at, and you're just like, and you're having a hard time understanding both how to use it and how it's used, right? Like what does it do, and what should I do with it,
Yeah,
right?
why should I do
Why
it?
why should I do it exactly? And that's comprehension complexity. It's just a single mechanic generally, and so I want to go on to here. So I think comprehension complexity is fundamental to any sort of learning. So many times the professor will say something that contradicts something else that I thought I knew. I thought, like, oh, they said this, but then this. I was like, but it's that doesn't make any sense, right? Or it's ambiguous, or like all these things. And so I think this is useful just any sort of learning. Anyways, I think this is a really a fun one. So void complexity. What's it called? A player may have to parse how one mechanic interacts with other mechanics. Generally, is what I call it. So you have a bunch of pieces, and you have to understand how one piece can be hit by all the other pieces, right? So it's tracking what interacts with what, right? If none of the pieces could ever touch each other, then they could all be used independently, right? But then you wouldn't have a game. If none of them touch each other except being able to hit the king, right? It's like, well, you just move past each other, all these weird things. Anyways. The result of one mechanic changes the result of many other mechanics, I guess, or many other things. I think this is where it gets fuzzy because I think others is vague, but I think just the fact that there is some state, right? And the mechanic can change that in a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
I'm sorry that's so vague, but maybe
So,
this makes
I'll
more
give an
sense. Go ahead.
example. So like Alex and I are working on we're working on like a turn-based game. So if you do a turn-based game on paper or like in the physical world, let's say you have an attack that moves all the pieces. In the physical world, you have to move all the pieces and you have to track all the positions properly. And it makes it even harder if you can't move the pieces physically, you just have numbers representing where they are. So like you have to update all those numbers. That's a lot of board complexity, a lot of data to track.
Mhm.
And the more data you have to track, the more board complexity you have. And computers help a lot with this because like they can do all the calculations automatically. But then there's also cases where like you might not have like a way to preview the outcome of an attack. Let's say you have an attack that moves all the enemies and you want to like make sure that your next attack can hit them in the new positions. If the game doesn't show a preview for that attack, then you have to do the move mechanic in your mind mentally. Like after I do this attack, they'll be here.
Mhm.
And now I can attack them with this unit, which will be here because I also moved them. And now you're tracking like 30 different things on different timelines and conditions.
And you should feel more uncertain of what you're
Yeah.
doing since it feels like you might be missing something.
Absolutely, yeah,
The
yeah.
enemy can also interrupt you because they can also move your units around. It's not like you're the only one who can move units around. The enemy can also move your units around. So like you're trying to like figure out all the possibilities.
Mhm. Absolutely. And I want to just do it one direction at a time. So if I have one action that can change many things, then I have to consider which one what should I use it on, right? Um, or in the sense of I think it's more useful when it's more an enemy or something that's stopping you, right? In that sense mechanic. Where like, oh, the enemy may deal 1 damage to anything in this case. In where you have to be like, oh, but they may hit this, or they may do this, or they may do this, or they may do this. And you're like, and if you are able to do multiple things, then the enemy has to acknowledge that you can do multiple things and play around each one of them, right? And that's a lot to track, especially if you have like a 200. If you have like a 200 piece board game, you're just like, oh my god, I don't know. This affects all the other pieces. It's like,
I
oh
don't
no.
this a bit more. Like the enemy may deal one damage, and that usually doesn't do much.
Mhm.
Maybe depends on the game.
Depends on the game, exactly.
But like if it usually doesn't do much, and then it randomly has a high impact and wipes out one of your units that you were trying to keep for a while, like you forgot that mechanic was in the game because it was so useless.
It's so useless. Yeah, you forget.
And now it's like, oh, what?
Yeah, go ahead.
There's a board game that I played where like you can have like different abilities that you can upgrade depending on what color pieces you have. Right. So so the game takes place on like hexes with like land tiles and water tiles. And so like in one instance you might be able to like attack someone and get their resources by cornering them against 2 lake tiles or something like that. But then if you might try that on someone else, but they're playing with the blue pieces, and then you didn't realize that because they have the blue pieces, they actually have the upgrade that lets them go into the water and flee from the.
Yes, it's really easy to miss something.
It's kind of like with complicated part. There's like a billion conditions.
Yeah, this is entirely conditional. It's combinational, this one. But I think I want to differentiate from the next one. So it's really common in strategy games. You can do some sort of calculation. You can hit this person. You can hit any of these units, but they all have some sort of defense. So you got to calculate each one. And you have to remember which one, or you got to choose one, and you got to just be, oh, that's the one I'm going to choose, right? And so it could be multiplicative. But I want to go to the next one, which is kind of the opposite in a sense. So the result of one mechanic is changed by the result of many others. Well, I guess in a physical board game sense, deal some damage for every unit you have. You're like, oh shoot, now I got to remember all my units. So I have like 200 units I got to do. Oh, now I have 201 units. So now I'm going to do 201 damage, right? I'm sorry. But a lot of times these sort of dependencies can be calculatable for a lot of video games. So you're like, oh, based on the state, then this unit or using this action will do this, right? Versus the other way around of this action could cause this many things to happen in the future, right? So it's just sort of an
With
scope.
the one thing that also makes this harder is that when you don't know the values that the game is using to have calculations.
Yeah.
Like Path of Exile has a power mechanic where you can calculate the power of surrounding enemies. I don't know if anyone calculates that manually, if ever. You just see enemies and they say assume high power. But like sometimes you need a certain amount of power to like actually like calculate something, ensure something actually happens. Like if you always need 20 power to trigger an effect, then
Get to remember anyone
you,
around
you
you.
have to like ensure it. And especially if that mechanic is costly to attempt. Like you press it, you have to wait 10 seconds before you can try again. You want to make sure you always get it. So you actually have to calculate the surrounding power. And you don't, most players don't know that mechanic even exists. Much less so how much each enemy has.
Yeah, just knowing something, having to know something exists and can happen, is that sense of tracking complexity. It's this board complexity of, oh, this action isn't independent. It's affected by all these other things, right? It's either dependent on all previous stuff or future stuff. Anyways, okay, I just want to keep this one simple. I want to go into it more, but yeah. Board, yeah. Well, it's the same thing in my definition right now. Board complexity as a state of the board from all result of all previous actions. People can, on average, remember 4 to 7 things. I'm not sure. Have you heard of that statistic, guys?
7 plus or minus 2.
7 plus or minus 2. Yeah, but on average, most people don't put in that much effort. When you're just playing a game, you're just like, oh, I remember these couple things, and then you're like, oh shoot. But yes, you could like improve it, but only to some amount. So I think as a reference point, if you have like things on the screen, you have to remember things. You probably shouldn't have more than 7. Honestly, the reason you're given most of the time like 3 choices or something is like, oh, so you can keep track of each one. But once again, I'm just being vague here because I'm not going into it right now. What's it called? It's easy to make a simple game that has extreme board complexity, or like simple mechanics, simple dynamics in some sense. I should probably make a better example for this, but like it could,
based on the surrounding health of enemies.
yes, and you're just like, oh shoot, now I gotta remember all those enemies. Okay, fast forward time. And a lot of it is like one of the things you have to know is that you have to understand what each thing does before you can understand how each thing interacts with each other. So comprehension complexity is the most obvious, right? It's the first thing you'll see, and then once you get past that, you'll have to see how things interact with each other, right? So you'll sort of see this combination. You learn some mechanics, you see how they interact with each other, and this is the duality of that
You
board
have
complexity, right?
to forget about it later.
In a way, yeah. Anyways, this is just the last one. The last one I want to go over, which is definitely the one that's the most nebulous in my head, but it's still interesting. And I think it's one I want to understand better. A player using a mechanic may have to choose some results, some better than others. I I think like more of a branching thing. So it's one action, but it could be used in multiple ways. Right? That's really what I'm going for, right? So uh, the sort of subtypes are like all previous actions and all possible future actions may change what is the best choice I should do with this thing, right? So I either throw the ball to you or to you, but the only reason I know which one to choose is because of my previous context, right? And so you have to understand how all the mechanics that will eventually affect you and your progress to the goal sort of stop you, right? Or will affect how good this action is at certain points, right? Once again, very vague. I'm so sorry. Anyways, this is essentially evaluating the whole game. It's interesting. It can be multiple choices disguised as one choice. Where I think something as simple as, oh, heal a target for 2 health, right? And you're like, okay, now I have to choose target, right? And I have to choose whether to use this now or later. And I have to choose what target I want to choose, right? So is it better to heal this person or this person? Go ahead.
There's a similar sort of choice that comes up like all the time in Silksong where it's like you can hit enemies to fill up your bar, and then like you could use that to heal for or at least with the upgrade I use, you could use it. You could use your bar to heal for 4, But what if you're only 3 below your max? Do you wait until you've taken more damage, or do you use it now? Because otherwise, if you hit things more, your bar's already full. You won't get any benefit from it.
But you have to understand that you can't get any more, and then at some point you may get more, or you may lose more, and you have to use it then, right? Good.
I was gonna say, like, for The Last of Us, there are scenarios where you can choose, like, just like sneak and like sneak kill them so you can save on bullets. Like, if you choose to use like a bullets like end it quickly, you'll end up like being scarce on it in
Later, you have to understand.
seconds.
You have to understand that you won't have any more later.
Yeah,
right.
like-
You understand that
The
effect?
classic problem of should I use this thing now
Or later.
I could use
Yeah.
it later.
So inherently,
Later, and you can
temporal,
swap
like
the
like
enemies.
using it now or later is a strategic
Potion hoarding is something
complexity
like
in itself.
that. Like 20,000 potions in your inventory. It's like, I'll probably use it later.
Later, I swear.
Half-Actual tries to make you use these because they force you, like, these kind of items are only usable between these levels, or like they become useless quickly. Like you're supposed to use them as soon as you get them.
This works better with the craft.
Sorry, guys.
Because it like makes you choose which
Oh, no,
one
it's
based on.
not.
No, it's hopefully it's somewhat interesting.
Some crest
Yeah,
actually.
the people-
I just have to be back in the department.
No, I understand. I understand. Yeah.
Have a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, good day.
Take care, Ethan.
Yeah, you
See you guys. Yeah. Okay, I guess all the homies. It's okay. Don't worry. But I think this is using things at certain times is inherently it's inherently strategic because you're like, I have to understand if I'm gonna get something out for the point in time, right? Or if I'll just naturally heal and we're just wasting my heal. Shit. Cool. So yeah, you have to understand, you have to comprehend and understand interactions before thinking about what action is best, right? So you have to understand, oh, at some point, at this checkpoint, I'll heal. But right now I'm low health. Do I want to heal now or later? Right. And so understanding how those two interact, right? At some point where some point I'll get to that checkpoint and I'll heal. Is that strategic, right? Which is really fun to think about. So woo, that was a lot. Sorry, guys. So I guess like why bother in the first place, right? So it's really we can make really complicated mechanics. I think complex is maybe not the most best word here, but I guess complex and complicated, but really complicated mechanics that hide complexity until the player can handle it, right? So generally, the term in the article was lenticular design, in the sense of it's like a window shade. You can see through it at one angle, but another angle you can't. Right. So as you learn more about the game, you'll see more mechanics and you'll see more interactions. You'll be like, oh, that's how it should actually work, or this is another consideration that I've had, right? So yeah.
Like one example of this is like FXL gun. FXL game as a whole is just you hit enemy dies.
Mhm.
And if you ignore all the gear, ignore all the skill tree, all the progression side of things, it really is just like you're just playing a action game. There's no items to it or
Click the right unit at the right time, and then move out of the way at the right time, right? Like
An example of this, I feel like TF2, you could probably give a new player TF2, they could play for 1,000 hours and not realize that they can use the rocket launcher to jump.
rocket jump. Yeah, exactly. You just never think about it, right? Like and that's sort of it's I guess that's sort of dynamic in a sense. I don't know if I guess they had to make the rocket hit you though, right?
I think they
So
did intentionally.
it probably is a
Because
mechanic
of the
then.
engine.
Yeah, probably because of engine. But I guess it doesn't really matter at that point. But yeah, the point is you have to learn about it, right? Like it was always there. You just have to know about it.
yeah.
So that's the hidden part,
I
right?
guess it's like a choice. Like you have a choice to look at it now
Mhm.
rather than like you're forced to learn the entire game before proceeding.
That's true. Yeah, you like this. We'll get into this, but like I could do this and just make progress now. Like I do I need to learn about this, right? And most times the gator will be
the rocket at the enemy.
yeah. I'll just like and then they'll die and then they'll win. Wow.
And there's also other options of moving yourself. Like you could jump, you can run to the
Right.
higher position. Like you have other options
But
other than
yeah.
learning the actual complicated, complex
The
mechanics.
key point is that a player will do the simplest thing. Generally, will do the simplest thing first. And maybe if they know that they can't go back, then they'll do all the weird stuff, right? They'll be like, oh, maybe I'll try this, and I'll do it right. But generally, let's just get to the next point, right? And a lot of people, I guess, more experienced game players will be like, oh, let's try to use other things because
Yeah.
right. But not necessarily. But generally hiding complexity. So there's 6 points that we don't have to go through all of them if you're not. But yeah, beginners understand the game piece by piece, see how the pieces interact, and after a long time, consider all the flexible choices, which we just went over, right? Like, strategic complexity is much easier to hide, right? Like using something at a different time is like, oh, unless you know that you can't do something later. What's up?
I don't know.
Good.
So like the potion issue.
Mhm.
Why wouldn't a player hoard the potion forever? Like, how do you hide that complexity?
What if you just think, oh, I wish my health was higher. I drink a health potion instead of thinking,
You have
I think I could get more use out of this health potion if I saved it for later. Like nothing's obligating you to think about it. You might get more utility out of that if you did think about that, but you could also just not.
Yeah,
Right.
you don't need to include that in the tutorial for the health potion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think part of it is that you have to understand what the player is
players
expecting.
Like players usually think consumables are somewhat rare.
Depends on how experienced
Yeah.
the game.
But it's like a resource. You pick it up. Oh, well, you did something to get it.
Because
Right.
there are definitely
Awesome.
like there's a hoarding type of player where they just hoard every single consumable.
Yeah.
They-
Understandable. Have a nice day.
And I did that forever until I was like, wait, I just never used this. I've
Mhm.
never gotten benefit from this. Like, there's no reason to do this.
I
Right.
don't know what Terraria did right, but that's one of the only games I know for consumables. Like when I have potions, I actively use them. I feel like maybe it's because
Well, you heal automatically, right? Well,
Well,
do you,
I mean,
Terraria,
if
you
you're
heal. That's
standing still,
right. That's what I'm saying. You
but
can.
like
Terraria has like
in
speed,
a lot
damage.
of the cases, you're getting attacked pretty actively, and the natural regen isn't fast enough
That's
unless you upgrade it using items.
It might also be that the bosses are almost like a consumable themselves. Like you need to achieve something to start the boss fight.
Yeah.
So your brain thinks it's better for me to waste a couple potions and beat the boss than
Yeah,
to
that's
not
like a
waste the
cost,
potions.
yes.
And have to
Right, right, right.
True.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
feel like
Yeah,
that
because,
might be like
because a lot of bosses are summoned by consumables.
Yeah.
Like,
or like playing Terra like a rare bulb.
Yeah,
stuff like
that's
that.
true. And yeah,
So I feel
Yeah,
like it's
especially because like if you build an arena, you have to find a bulb near enough.
And
to
also,
your
if
arena where
Terraria-
you can get back after summoning Plethora.
so I feel like subconsciously you balance those two consumables and you're like, this would be a lot more worth my time if I use this one instead of burning this one. So I think maybe that's how
So
they
like one thing
tackle it.
about Terraria is like you usually know what boss you're going into. Like you have a choice of summoning that boss, and there's also a cost of summoning that boss. With like some games, like let's say a story game, you always know there's a harder boss. So if you can save your potions on this boss and use them on the next one, why wouldn't you? And then you get to the next boss and you repeat the level.
You're like, oh
And
shoot.
eventually,
Yes,
you're-
that's exactly what happened.
Eventually, you've upgraded to the point where the amount of max health you have is way bigger than the amount you'd heal from one of those
From the potion,
potions.
that's just worthless, right? And, like,
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
Right. Interesting how that works,
I
right?
think potions in general are like a weird idea because if you have to use potions to fight the boss and then you lose to the boss, you don't have those potions anymore. It's gonna feel more infuriating that you
Yeah.
don't have those buffs.
Yeah,
It
absolutely.
makes you feel more scared to use the potion because it's like,
For
well,
sure.
what if I lose now?
Right. There's
You avoid using like tools and Silksong on like the consumable tools on bosses because it's just going to use up all my shards.
You lose to a boss 5 times, you
Yeah.
have no shards left, and now you can't.
Yeah, you have no
tools.
choice.
it's like
I'd rather
yeah.
avoid that play style from the start than have to
Yeah.
move to a new one
I
after
remember
running
one boss in Silksong that happened to me too, and it's like the third boss or something. That exactly happened to me. I was just so.
Don't fight the bosses in a linear order. I've got no idea what you're going
I-
for
fair.
a boss.
Yeah.
And that's basically why I don't think this is easy to hide.
Hmm.
You have to intentionally make it something that the player can't decide to keep doing.
I think strategic complexity is the type of thing that the player just consciously chooses to engage in. Now, you can design your game such that
Yeah.
they have to engage in that in
Mhm.
order to be able to proceed in a like feasible way, but like it's still the player's decision.
Yeah, then that brings into like how impactful are those consumables? Are those actually useful, or is it like just
Hmm.
something that you like? There's no use them whenever you feel like it.
Well, there has to be some knowledge of, or I guess part of hiding I'm sorry. Oh, I just lost my train of thought. So sorry. Okay. Um It's okay. Sorry, guys. Um, yeah. So yeah, you could hide. Yeah, but I mean, part of this has to be where the player would have to make a different decision, right? Like there was no matter what, if the player is making the same decision, doesn't matter how complicated it ends up being. Well, it does when using when doing other things, right? But if you only need to make this one decision, and no matter what you learn, you're gonna make that same decision, then I guess you can make it as complex as you want.
That's making like the other decisions like not impactful, right?
Mm,
So is there a strategy or is it like a false choice? And like the good thing is
not
like
the right
false
state of mind.
choices are fine because like usually in a game you just want to attack the enemy. You don't really need other choices unless you want to engage with them. And that's like one way of like hiding strategic complexity. Is that if whacking the enemy is good enough, then you don't need to engage with a strategy in the first place.
Sometimes
Right.
it can be more fun or more
It can be
efficient.
more fun, more efficient, but like if someone just wants to get through the game and
Yeah,
wants to whack,
casual
Yeah.
gameplay friendly game,
yeah.
which obviously doesn't have to be every game.
Mhm.
And at that point,
This
yeah,
is be
it's not
something
that
that
you're hiding the, I guess it is hiding the strategy. But you give an option like where you don't need to engage with the strategy.
Mhm.
So like you hide it by removing the need for it.
Well, you don't think you need it until at some point some actions are taken where against you or like some obstacles are put in the way where you
Yeah,
actually needed
that's
to do it.
one way
Like,
to
you
do
didn't
it.
know that you needed it, right?
And that's kind of like
Which is part of strategic.
introducing it at different points. Like you can introduce the mechanic as soon as it's available, or what as soon as you like actually need it. Like let's say like uh fighting game where you have to dodge the enemy. They can tell you like you can dodge at the very start, or they can pause the game and tell you to dodge immediately after the boss starts attacking you.
Mm.
So like it tells you when to dodge, and you'll immediately see that happening. So like, you kind of get an example.
Well,
When
you,
that's
yeah, you make an association for sure. And so so from then on, you're like, oh, then whenever I see get an attack, I'll try to dodge, right? Like that's really the idea. And I guess something that would be, or like,
it's kind of like teaching you how to like make decisions in this game, and that's something
yeah,
like I want to like subtly like teach players. Like I want to like design a game where like I have consumables that are very powerful, but I want to teach the game and the players when to use them and make them feel like it's very intuitive when to use them.
mm,
And also one of the other things like as a design, like all games include decisions, but you can engineer how the players make those decisions. Like if you make like two paths and make one path really difficult looking, then you can expect the player to take that easier path most of the time.
mm.
So you can engineer the decisions that the player makes.
Mm.
And that's one way like to control the strategic complexity.
I think I'm sorry, just one more part of this. I think part of this is like just not being aware that something might affect the choice that might affect this choice.
Yeah, I guess
right?
in other words, like a
Like,
what if scenario.
yeah.
If you don't have full information, you usually want to just hold on to whatever you're doing.
Yeah, but if you yeah, I think my thought process is slightly different from yours, so I'm having a hard time reconciling it.
Okay.
But I guess part of it is just like, oh, you dodge when you're being attacked. Oh, but actually you could dodge, but it gives you a little bit of airtime, and you realize, oh, you can cross a gap with that dodge, right? That's realizing, oh, this is not something that I was taught to do, but after realize I can become aware that it lets me do this, right? That's part of the design we're looking for. Um, and so you'll be like, oh, that makes sense. Okay, so when a beginner first sees a mechanic, they must believe they completely understand the intent of that mechanic. So if you're designing a mechanic that's supposed to be hiding some complexity, uh, or hiding some, yeah, it's fine. But in this case, the example was, well, this action has an obvious use, right? And there does not seem to be any reason why I would ever do anything else, right? So in this case, I guess with a health potion, um, you would never seem like there was another boss after this boss, right? That's what you designed it to be like. Does that make sense? So you're like, okay, this is the boss, this is the final boss. You have your health potions, use them now, right? And then only that, if the player does not think there's gonna be another boss, they will use what they can, right? It's kind of like the boss after the final boss. You're like, oh shoot, I used to all my stuff, right?
No,
But
also like
go ahead.
you kind of lying to the player if there's actually another boss.
Or if the boss has a second phase, you use all your health potions in the first phase, and then
Yeah,
oh,
that's true. That's true.
you
Yeah.
find
Oh,
like a
dang it! I
second
used all
one,
that.
and then you start.
Absolutely.
Wait.
Yeah. Yeah, I know, right?
But you
It's all good.
do.
Sorry.
Wait,
Okay.
can I say
Sorry.
one
This went on super long. I'm so sorry, guys.
Yeah, like a lot of games put a capacity on how many like class characters you have. Like Dark Souls, you can
Oh yeah,
only
it's,
set-
yeah, Souls like games.
you can only use like it heals you to full, sure, but like you only heal to full 3 times or whatever.
In a game like Hollow Knight, I love that I keep referencing Hollow Knight. It's one of the greatest.
It's good.
The nail, the default attack, you'd think you'd know what that is. It's just an attack, but you can also attack down and poke off spikes. And if you know that from the start, you can get items super early in the game.
That's what we're going for.
I
Yeah.
ended up fighting Watcher Knights way earlier than I was supposed to because I pogoed off a statue before getting double jump.
Yeah, like the Farm Fury of the Fallen.
On my
is
first
first.
playthrough.
Yeah.
I never upgraded my nail before Watcher Knights. It was the worst.
Same
thing
thing.
ever.
Same thing.
Actually, I think we should do that.
You could.
They should make the blacksmith more obvious. They have signs, but I don't think so. No.
Right. Well, I guess the point is not lying to the player. The point is there is a path that the player can take, but there's also another path the player can take that as they learn the game that may be actually better.
Yeah.
That's the goal. And the thing is, it's just not being able. They're starting the game and they're not able to understand that level of complexity yet.
Yeah.
That's the point. The point is like, oh, like it's not something you would find out naturally, and like finding it out, like, it's a cool. It can be a cool trick, but also it can be something where over time you'll start to realize how valuable it can be, right? And find different ways of using it. Right? It's okay. I'm sorry. This is fine. Next one. Generally, as just observations from the article, they were like, okay, generally a player has a hard time thinking ahead of all the future turns and future moves because you have to understand, okay, I got to do this first. Like you're so focused on what you can do now and what you should do now that you have a hard time thinking ahead of what can happen later, right? And generally, if you could do it at any time, you could save it if you don't, right? We talked about this before. For speedrunning. Okay. A beginner has a hard time seeing certain causations in the sense of one action may cause another action way down the line. And an action can be made or described to seem good on its own. Like, oh, you could write on this paper, right? And oh, well, you could write down your thoughts or write down whatever you want, right? But there's extra things you could do with the paper. I can make a paper plan. Like, I never thought to do that, right? But while it doesn't seem useful until you realize, oh, maybe it's useful if I want to send a message to somebody, right? You find a new use for it. But and the example was like, oh, if the unit dies, it deals with damage, right? But the only way a unit can die in this case would be if they can only die in combat, then they do some combat damage and then they do the on death thing, right? So then you can do 2 damage or you can do more damage, right? So you gotta think how things relate to each other, right? Anyways, a beginner can learn to oh God. This phrasing. A beginner learns to expect to take an action for a certain reason, like the dodging example, and that reason is to make progress towards a goal. I want to kill the boss, so I don't want to die, so I need to dodge out of the way, right? If a mechanic did make progress, you could say, oh, it has this extra effect too, right? So like the 10% lightning damage, right? Or it has an extra effect that encouraged me. Hold on, let me think. Did I get easy? Yeah. Okay. Yes. So if I'm using
Like if you dodge and you take more damage after the dodge.
in a way, yeah, you can. It's more like I'll say it's probably more like the health potion thing, honestly. You use it, but you're like, oh, I'm not gonna get more later, right? It's like,
Yeah,
oh
you have
shoot.
punishment
Then you're
based
just like, then you're just waiting, and you're just like, I didn't get to do this thing. I wanted to do this thing. I want to use my health potion. I want to heal, but I'm also afraid to not be able to do it later, right? And that like sort of contradiction causes a lot of frustration with people. So you want to avoid that design, right? That's sort of what we're going
You don't
for.
want to be punished for using something.
Right, right. If something does two things, two or more things, and one of the things should obviously be used in one way, but it's also should be used another way. You're being pulled in different
And
directions.
that's why it's like the soul style flasks are much better typically, and people actually use them because you have to use them, otherwise they don't do anything.
And you'll
If
get
you
them
use
again.
them, you do get them back. Fail, so like there's no like permanent loss there.
It's just something that you could use at a certain time that will help you, and then you'll get it back later. You know that.
Or like
Right.
if you have an ability that can do two different things, it'll come off cooldown like after a certain amount of time.
Right,
But
right.
you don't feel like, oh, I shouldn't use it right now.
Yeah, you're not
Exactly.
forever.
Maybe you could push it back a little bit later to get maybe both of them.
Yeah.
But you don't want to. If you push it back too far, you're just like, oh, I wanted to use this thing. I should have used this thing. Shit. You know, like, so it can really cause some frustration. But definitely for abilities, it's a big point. Like, should I use it now? Do I use my ult now or later? Right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I could like pull in the whole team if I did this cool thing, but I didn't do the
Like
whole
2 minutes, like it can be like a 1 hour thing. It could be like a 2 minute thing,
Mhm.
and like shorter it is, but like it makes it a lot easier
Mhm.
for a player.
Yeah, you just don't want
If
to.
you have like a 1 hour cooldown on an ability, and like the player is like, do I wait 1 hour to fight the boss again?
Yeah, you don't want an ability that pulls in two different directions. That's really important.
I think
Every
if you pull in two different directions, you want to do so in a way that's interesting
Yeah.
rather than
That's true.
frustrating.
yeah, well, you
Like, I mean, having drawbacks to things is natural and
Yeah.
introduces challenge.
But you don't want it to like incentivize not doing the thing you're supposed to.
exactly. You should never be
It
like,
shouldn't
oh,
incentivize against using it at all,
At all,
but it
yeah.
should just make it a more interesting choice of whether to use.
mhm. Right, but like you'll still the action itself is still useful even with the drawback. You know what I mean? Like there is a reason it should never be like the drawback completely cancels out the benefit because then you're like, why would I ever do this thing? And like it's really easy to design an ability like that. Like if you're trying to like make a tactics game where just like, oh, like you do this, but also this thing happens. And you're just like, why would I ever want to do this thing then? I'm just gonna I don't want to die. I don't want to have this thing happen. And so you're just like, well, I don't why bother, right? Why bother with this? Vague, sorry. So well, I think what are the final things? Yeah. A player wants to achieve a goal, give them tools to make progress to their goal. Like exactly what we're saying. We need some way of making progress, right? I think something interesting, if you can only go backward in Mario, you can never complete the level. It's called. And I guess even a beginner wants to take actions that they understand or that they think they understand. Let's go forward and jump over this thing. And I want it to be enjoyable. I enjoy jumping. Like I could jump over the thing. I made it over. Sweet. I hit the Goomba. Cool. Right. So even if there's more, I guess I keep wanting to say depth, but it's really just hidden complexity. It's fine. There can be more to it, but the basic mechanics, there should be a basic path. We went over this before. There should be, this is the intended set of actions, right? Or at least it should seem that way, right? Like, oh, if I could, I know I could run and jump, so I should be able to run and jump to this level, right? But there could be something else you could do that maybe you don't know yet. Sorry, were you gonna say anything?
No.
No. Okay. But generally, I think what's interesting, experienced players like to apply their knowledge generally. Like they learn something and like, oh, let's use this thing,
Yeah.
right? You want to like, bounce over these gaps. Yeah, let's use it. And you get that sense of like learning progress.
And I think this is a good way to sum it up as well, like this slide.
Mhm.
And like
So-
one thing is like another thing to apply to game design or in like game development as a whole is like usually you want to achieve step A first, make it so that players can enjoy your game first, and then you can make it so that experienced players can enjoy your game more. Because like I've seen a lot of games where like it's like there's a lot of complexity, but like you have to get good at the game first before you can enjoy any of it.
The path to even completing one game is so complex, or so it takes so much energy that I don't want to play it anymore.
Sometimes, like when you're developing, you're developing the complex mechanics first, and then you never actually beat the game, which is even worse.
Something that's kind of reminds me of like just the idea of having a game with a high barrier to entry, like you're describing, is like something like Kerbal Space Program where you're trying to launch an actual rocket, and now you have to know, like understand thrust weight ratio, aerodynamic stability, pitching in the correct direction to most efficiently enter orbit, actually entering orbit by like turning at the right time, exiting the atmosphere, making sure both ends of your orbit are out of the atmosphere, all that sort of stuff. And like it gets way worse when you try to do like realism overhaul, where you have to read like pages upon pages of stuff in order to even launch a single rocket.
At least you can like enjoy the rocket blowing up.
You can enjoy it. It's not very like, oh, you built it wrong, and it just tips over and falls.
Yeah.
Meters and explodes.
Yes.
At least that happens. Some games don't even
have that. Yeah. Or you have to build it in the exact way to even launch it. And you're just, oh my God. But no,
there is a niche for just absolute nonsense in Kerbal Space Program.
Yeah, but I guess the point is, if you have this complex game and you have all these things, the path to even starting it should be pretty simple, right? It should hide the rest of it, because I want to enjoy at least the basic parts. I want to put the thruster. I want to put the fuel. I want to put the little launcher. I want to launch it. Let me launch it. Let me launch the game. Like, please. Yes, exactly. But like, there should be that. Like, as a player, that's how I could see. Okay, this is what I need to do next, right? And then you can learn from there. Go ahead.
I feel like Hearthstone at this point is impossible to get into. Like, they've gone through. I play Wild only because I have cards from like 6 years ago. I'm not gonna do cards.
Yeah. That's why
if I want to play in the new set, it's all new keywords, and I can't even imagine starting the game now. You don't know about taunt, win period, the default ones. Right when you learn about those, you go right into the normal game. You have 8 more keywords.
Yeah.
Like I can't imagine anyone starting to play Hearthstone now and understanding it. Like it's like impossible.
The chess meta has had far too many years to develop.
Yeah.
Getting into like higher level chess at this point requires memorizing.
You have to learn 15 openings, or you will lose to the 4-year-old at the local.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, sad days. But yeah, at least you can play. It's just a mess. But yeah, I think that sort of thing. I think overall you can adjust the mechanic to hide its complexity. If you have some sort of mechanics, the player can do certain things. The player needs to know, do this for this reason, do this for that reason,
Especially
do this for this.
mechanics
Put together.
contribute towards like one consistent goal.
One more time? Yeah.
Like what you have, the mechanics all contribute to one goal. So like, they help each other and they're not mutually exclusive, and they're not like conflicting. Like if there's like 20 mechanics achieving like 20 different goals, and like you don't even know the goal.
You feel unfocused.
You just feel like, oh, what do I do first? Or like what matters, right?
You're not choosing mechanics at that point. You're trying to choose a goal.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's interesting, but like sometimes that also like loses focus. Like Path of Exile, the whole point is to kill monsters, so everything should be towards that. And that's at the end of the day why like Path of Exile can be a chill game to play, but it also can be a very, very complex game where you use a spreadsheet to figure out everything.
Exactly. Like I literally just click through Path of Exile. I'm like, oh, little, pick it up, put it on, let's try it, pokey. But like you look at there's just so many different ways of building a character. Like there's somebody you choose different abilities. You could choose different skills. You could choose you could choose different passive abilities. Like there's all these variations, but they're all variations on the thing that's simple to do, right? Like, and I think that really opens. It's a lower barrier to entry, right? That's sort of the
point. Things to it.
Yeah.
Especially if you choose not to engage with that.
And the thing is, you could engage with it at your own pace,
because like,
which is really nice.
Like chess meta, right?
Like respect the player.
Are you trying to be the champions? Or are you trying to have fun with your like friend?
True. Yeah. Exactly. If you guys are both learning,
you gotta make sure that your friend is at the same level as you.
Yeah. Or just using the same set, right? using the same card set. Well, I understand what the heck you're doing because I know I have the same choices. But yeah, that's what we're going for. But it's interesting. Yeah, you could have mechanics that reach different goals, different progress. There's a lot to this, but I appreciate you guys sticking through it. But I think it's just interesting to think about when you're considering a mechanic. Like, do I want to put this in? Will this help me? What might player get stuck on? What may be complicated? I think these sort of terms may help you on the path to determine what's
Honestly,
needed.
it's really helpful for this game development, like programming. You run into these a lot.
Yeah.
And like complicatedness and complexity, like
It's
is
any
your
thought.
is your code actually achieving a goal, or is it just there because like you're just handling 50 edge cases that you didn't think of?
Yeah. Yeah. This is just any sort of thought, anything you could interpret and like put together and be like, oh, I mean, humans chunk things, right? A chunk is inherently like hierarchical, right? You turn multiple things into one thing. That's the whole point. But yeah, you just, do I need this or not? Does it help me make progress towards a goal, right? Like, and you're like, okay, what might get in the way? The name of this variable is confusing as hell, right? Like why would you even need this variable, right? And that's comprehension complexity. You see where I'm going with this? I think like the terms are useful. Like you go, oh, I'm confused because of this thing in that way.
Another
Right.
thing is like this game design is just kind of like designing a problem that's nice to solve.
Yeah, yeah, ideally. I mean, there's a reason there's some really complicated algorithms people even implement, right? Because it's just like it's not worth it. There's so many edge cases, so many things to keep track of. It's nice. Okay, that's it. You could fill this form if you want. I don't know.
It's already full.
I wanted to
Sorry.
mention something
Thank you,
real
guys.
quick. So remember the platformer game that I made, like I think I mentioned like 3 times for Emerging Complexity.
Yeah, yeah.
It's actually on sale on Steam for $1 right now, 95% sale. It's called
Huge.
Levelhead.
Levelhead is great.
I've seen that on Steam.
I'm familiar with it. Yeah.
It's like 5 years ago, but they're doing like a big promo like right now, so it's on a huge
Yeah.
sale. It's
Sweet.
a
Okay,
really awesome game.
I think some more people are trying to get it. Okay. Sorry.